And we've got a very cool fireside chat now with Valerie, Nicole, and Paul. Let's welcome them up.
Hi. Hi, everybody. I'm Valerie Swacco. I'm Chief Development Officer at Highline Beta. And, as we just said, we're here to celebrate the impressive, safe, and connected two-cohort pilot accelerator that Aviva launched in partnership with Highline Beta. And, we're going to meet 6 companies that are here today to talk to us about how they're really solving challenges in cities and communities across the country. But before we introduce them, it's my pleasure to host a conversation to give greater context to the aim of the accelerator and also how corporate collaboration with the startup ecosystem is truly helping create impactful solutions. And we really hope to serve up some insight as well as to what the future holds for smart cities and urban tech. So now, representing the voice of Aviva and bringing to life, I guess, the point of view of the corporate side is Paul Fletcher, Senior Vice President of Marketing at Aviva Canada. Hi, Paul.
Hi there. How are you doing?
Good. And I'd also like to introduce Nicole LeBlanc, partner at 2150. She's an investor focused on urban tech and sustainability. Hi, Nicole.
Hi. Great to be here. Looking forward to this discussion.
Yeah, we're gonna launch into this because I know everybody's really excited to meet the accelerators, but not the accelerators, but the startups. But before we really get into that, Paul, I'm gonna start with you in a really wide question, which is, why did you build an accelerator program, Safe and Connected?
Great. Valerie, thank you. Well, the first thing I want to do today is about celebrating each of the teams that brought forward the ideas and their innovations and the progress they've made. So congratulations to all of those groups and anybody who's involved in supporting it as well, because there's some spectacular things that are going to be revealed to everybody today. Why did Aviva start this and start these discussions with Highline Beta? We're in the insurance industry, as many will know, and it's 150,000 individuals get injured on just Canadian roads every year. So if you think about North American roads and then expand that to globally, there's a lot of opportunity to have positive impact, whether it's social impact or economic impact, by sort of taking some of that out. And we see this every day because we're involved in the aftermath, and we believe we can make a difference. So we were stepping back and we had this concept of take back our roads that we were kicking around, and we got some build a campaign and an agenda and a drive towards how can we help improve safety on roads for everybody, all stakeholders. There's a big payoff if we can get it. And then we stepped back even further and we thought, the world of technology and the new innovations, whether it's the speed of being able to analyze data and bring that data to insight and then action, or whether it was technology around the cameras and some of the fantastic insights that can come from using visual information more quickly to really help maybe design of infrastructure, or some of the tools that we all use every day, like our cars or buses. How can we impact that and help those areas? Because we saw that in all of this area, the world is ready for a leap forward again. And we believe that there's a big impact that come through. And we were delighted to be able to partner with Highline Beta and the concepts that Hussam and his team were able to bring together and bring this idea of supporting worthwhile, innovative, tech-driven teams and small businesses and startups so that they could bring ideas to life and take them to market way more quickly. Because after all, this is about impact. That's what we're trying to do. And we think we've got a really good recipe and foundation and some great stories that everyone's going to hear about in just 20 minutes' time.
Excellent. And I would say, what was the thing or things that Aviva learned about collaborating with startups in this?
Yeah, well, that's step back, think about a company like Aviva. We're an insurance company. We like risk. We take risk, but it's interesting. We only understand risk after sitting back and studying stuff for maybe 20 years, getting a bunch of data that comes through that we can really analyze to death, and then we can begin to understand it and price it. Time-wise, one of the things that we've learned is the world of startups is not 20 years, is it? The world's very quick. They have to be agile. They have to be thinking through their problems and solving them very quickly. So one of the things that we've learned, and it's been very great for us actually and our teams that have been involved, is how do we perhaps learn from some of the agility and bring it into our world and our business that each startup has to have to take their steps forward. That's been really powerful for us. And I think also a company like Aviva, there's an urge sometimes to shape and control. That's corporate, and that isn't this world, is it? It can't work for this world. Again, the agility piece and the adaptability piece is really important for us. I mean, so we've taken some great positive things. We've also learned a few challenges, actually. And one of the things I would say is when you have great tech or innovation or insight, it's very easy to see 5, 6, 20, 25, 30 ways it could be brought and used. And that can create distraction in itself. So there's value in focus, if that makes sense as well. Quickly pick the areas where there's payoff and a win, and then focus on those, because there's plenty of opportunity for distraction out there. So hopefully, Valerie, that gives a bit of a flavour of some of the things that Aviva's seen and hopefully played a part in.
Absolutely. And I love the line, we love risk. I mean, truly, that's exciting in itself. But absolutely, value creation is critical, and it's critical for a program like this. And so I'm going to actually flip over to Nicole now to really talk as an investor, that's specialized specifically now in urban tech. What do you think about the power of startup innovation combined with corporate investment, especially in this space?
So this is very important. And for all of you that are on the startup side, you're very passionate. You want to move fast. You really want to, get in front of customers, really start figuring it out, iterating. And on the corporate side, corporations need solutions, but, iteration and, failure is not something that is really something that can be, easily accepted within kind of a larger corporate organization with different stakeholders and different teams. So having a cohort like this and having somebody like Aviva to be able to, work with the startups in a way that, the corporate can then, help the startups understand this is how our corporation works. This is how we make decisions. These are the different stakeholders you need to actually get in front of. And then the startup has kind of the safety of the cohort to be able to iterate, work through those things, test things out. And it's just this really kind of like great intersection of the two types of business models to be able to then figure out, okay, how do we actually work together? Because both organizations really need each other to be able to, corporates, can have this nimbleness that come from the startups, and the startups can have, the anchor customer logo and revenue and impact that can come from working with the corporate. And you can't just make introductions and be like, here you go, hopefully this works out. So basically the iterations of going through this cohort is so important. And really for startups to scale fast and to have the impact, we really need corporates to be able to take this leadership role, to get involved and to really shepherd the startups, through. It's not just a matter of, replying to an RFP, winning or losing it, and then implementing it. It just can't be that simple. And in particular for the Canadian market, having more corporates get involved is really, really important to just the growth of the ecosystem. And you can see like Toronto is super hot right now. Like the world is starting to take notice. And one of the reasons is because more corporates are starting to get involved and support startups. And so it's really exciting to see this model where, startups are able to understand the language of corporates, and corporates are able to understand the risk and be able to, figure out how to champion and shepherd the startups through the system.
Right. And I think a big part of that, that relationship is the mentorship, right? And that, we actually talk about the mentorship of the corporate side as the secret sauce in this type of an accelerator, because it's that invaluable expertise that the corporate side has that, does give this insight and new traction for these startups very quickly. So Paul, how did you guys, mentorship doesn't just happen. You can't just go, oh, we're going to launch this. And it's going to be great and we're going to help you. You've got to kind of make it happen. How did, you go about that at Aviva, getting those mentors involved?
Yeah, thank you. So there's no shortage of volunteers within a company like ours because it's interesting and fascinating to work with different parties, and people will learn. So first step, it's not a problem getting people to put their hand up and say, I'd love to participate in some way. The trick is making sure the value exchange is the right value that comes through. So an example here would be perhaps to think about what skill sets or capabilities does a company like Aviva have that maybe the startup or startup as a general group might lack or might benefit from easier access to. So that's one thought. There's also areas where you're looking for ways that the very nature of the insight or idea or potential market space, we might have people who operate in that market, maybe in a tangential way, but are operating with us the same kind of customer group or community, so exist within the value chain. And that means they can help accelerate learning about the value chain or the dynamics of it in that particular sector. It means that they can perhaps open up access to their own relationships and own network and accelerate and speed up those connections coming to life. So I'll give you a few examples. In cohort one, we've got one of the startups, and again, they'll talk to their capabilities later, so I don't want to steal too much thunder. But really interested in claims data in auto collisions. So we had a lot of data in that space, but just sharing and giving access to data, even if it's privatized and clean from that perspective, it needs to be interpreted. How is it structured? How is it used? What's it really saying? What are the pitfalls in the data? So we have had our data leader spend some really good quality time with this particular team and startup team, understanding our data, and that could then be used as they were building their story, their business case, thinking where their proposition could add value to different parts of the value chain as well. So that's a really nice specific example. Cohort two, there's one of the teams very focused on weather and how that can impact transportation as well. And we were able to use one of our most senior commercial fleet transportation underwriters, very well connected into the sector, and he was able to help facilitate, whether it's through distributors or the actual fleet environment themselves, make the right connections. So those are very specific ways of mentoring can add value and how we can choose. And then step back, there could be more generic skills that perhaps could benefit any kind of business actually that's in an early stage of development. So one of our team spent some time on sort of how to pitch media 101. How do you get attention? How do you get noise? And that's a tool and skills that may not be immediately available, but an organization like Aviva could bring some of those ideas. And if nothing else, avoid the first 5 mistakes that everybody makes. Because everybody makes them. If you can avoid those, you've saved some resource, you've saved some time, and you make new mistakes, of course you do. But at least you're further along the curve is the idea. If that's the way to learn fast and adapt quickly is the spirit of that. But we can help people accelerate is the point by some of the more generic skills as well. So that's mentor and bringing value and some value exchange. And our people, as I said at the very beginning of the response, they get enthused by it, they get excited by it, they learn by it, and they see future possibilities as well. So the value exchange definitely pays off, hopefully, for both parties. Certainly for Aviva, we feel it does. Yeah,
I think that passion, founder passion goes far. So that's amazing. So you did talk a little bit about some of the things that you were achieved from the data side, but in terms of impact specifically, did you see, was there any solution that comes to mind that, really, and again, we are going to hear from the startups themselves, but, what are some of the solutions that you saw that really you felt was making impact, for Aviva and for those communities?
So I think they all do and they all will. And from Aviva's lens, if all of these ideas that we're about to hear about get traction and are implemented to different levels of different extent across industry or cities or the transport network or within vehicles, the cumulative payoff could be huge. Yeah, so we're excited about that, and that's floating all boats, and that's helping society in a really big way moving forwards. If I just call out a few of the ideas, it's very hard sometimes in the world of accidents and collisions to prove a negative. You know, something didn't happen. How do you prove that? Yeah, so the measurement game is interesting. But think of one of the startups. We'll talk about some of their thinking about how do they reduce distracted driving amongst maybe fleet operators. What are the tools to do that? Well, if you can track how often people might be distracted and then have interventions to reduce that frequency of distraction, it's very well accepted that distracted driving leads to collisions, which leads to damage, basically. So if we can show the lead indicators that we're reducing those instances and the frequency of those events, then we can comfortably say there's an impact that's positive in terms of end result. So that would be one area that I would pick out. Another one in the traffic space is studying near misses at junctions. Yeah. Now, if we, for example, we can identify a junction where we can see, oh, there were 100 near misses, and then we can recommend a few changes, and one of the startups is very focused on this, to the way that junction is designed, or maybe the timing of the light flow or the flow of traffic, and you can show that those 100 near misses has dropped to maybe 10. Again, well, if every 100 near misses turns into one collision, the stats will show that there's a payoff, there's a real benefit that comes from that. So I think impact there is real. And then, some of the work around how the flow around modern cities works as well. And again, one of the startups has got some great interventions in place in different parts of the world, looking at how flow, whether it's people, whether it's vehicles, how it all interacts, and doing that in a way that, by the way, doesn't infringe any concerns around privacy, but enables planners to, smart planning and make adjustments. There'll be immediate intervention benefit from those, and those cities will benefit, but also the principles of design will also flow to that community of designers as well. So there's a kind of, there'll be specific benefit, and there'll be sort of design principles that just improve around the world from this kind of thing. So I picked out 3 there, but as I step back and I'd say as these things get implemented, and they are and they will, and they'll be more fully implemented, the cumulative impact will be very substantial over time, and will create big lift for whether it's a city, whether it's this, whether it's individuals. We should be excited about that. It's really good work.
Yeah, it's amazing. I mean, kind of so glad we're going to hear from the startups, but I swear to God, I feel like we could talk about this for hours. It's very exciting. So actually, Nicole, from your perspective, this impact, is amazing. But what do you think? How much do you think that the mentorship that Aviva gave to these startups helped them, ultimately in succeeding this impact that they're making?
So I'll actually tie it to the question that somebody's asked in the chat about speed of decision making internally. And so, generally within corporates, there is a structure, and even if you have a champion within a corporate, sometimes it still takes time for them to move it up the chain. Often there might be multiple business units that have to sign off. And that's just the nature of a large corporation that's dealing with large budgets and making sure everything's interconnected. And, it can be very frustrating for startups that, are used to faster decision making and, one decision maker, and they can basically text back and forth and, have a glass of wine and decisions been made inside the startup. And so it's just very different from what startups are used to. So having a program like this enables more touch points. So as Paul was saying, lots of people within the organization were super, quick to put up their hand and say, I want to mentor this company. I want to help this company. So having these multiple points of contact, I think, can be very helpful. Basically some of them are formal decision makers that, you're going to actually have to get through their gates anyway. Others are informal, so they can actually, kind of give informal, kind of check marks, and they can informally guide a startup through to be able to help them, maybe accelerate faster through some of those decision points. And so, how many times has a startup, gotten somebody that's like super excited to be like, we're going to do this and it's amazing. And 6 months later, you're having the same conversation. And then 3 months after that, you're still having the same conversation. And the startup really wants to believe that person, and that person truly believes they can shepherd them through. It's just a matter of like, sometimes it has nothing to do with you. It's, there's another business unit that is, having an M&A transaction in a completely different field that's just taking all of the decision-making time right now. And so by having multiple touch points, by going through this accelerator style process, you're able to then, really be able to, kind of get more information to really be able to ensure that you're set up for success, and do have a more realistic timeline so that the corporate can actually share that information. So the expectations are also managed that it really is going to take 9 months. It's not going to take 2 months, no matter how much somebody wants to drive it through.
Right. Yeah. Patience. Okay, we're almost out of time, but Paul, on a final note from you, what are the future innovation projects at Aviva look like? And do you think you're going to continue to work with startups?
I would say I'm very sure we will do. Step back a little bit. The big story in the world right now, well, there's two big stories, but the big long-term story, hopefully, is the climate change agenda. And that, as an insurance company, that's really important to us, because if there's a big weather event that leads to lots of damage, guess who's paying the bill at the end of the day? Aviva has made what we call net zero as an insurance company by 2040, and within our own operations by 2030, which is, believe it or not, a big challenge, because the solutions and answers to all of their operations, I think, but net zero insurer look like. So we've taken this position, and I think if it's not the leading, it's one of the leading positions globally here, and we need to work it out. We've made the commitment. Now we've got to work out our path, and we need help to succeed on that journey at the end of the day. Whether it is working with suppliers that we have an obligation to help their journey to net zero, whether it's thinking about the customers that we insure, whether it's the science behind making decisions, whether it is helping small businesses, which is probably the most acute area, really work out the things that they can make a difference on. We have to find solutions for all of this, and we don't have all the answers. So we need help. We're looking, right? We will collaborate with large organizations, small organizations, with governments, whatever, because we want to play our part. But we know that this particular one is a team game, and we're absolutely convinced that there's lots of innovation, probably a few mistakes, and readjustments and a bit of agility. But this is the area where I would be saying, how do we manage risk in this transition world? And we have to transition effectively. And as an insurer, that's really important to us. So we'll be keen to be stimulating ideas and innovation in that space.
Amazing. So actually, Nicole, I'm going to close with you having the last word today. Paul just talked a little bit about future innovation with Aviva, and from your place and your viewpoint in terms of cities of tomorrow and urban tech, like what are the things we should be paying attention to? What do you think are the 3, or I don't know, pick whatever number innovations that have caught your attention?
I have a long list, but I'll leave you with a couple of thoughts. So the first one specific to this cohort is what's really interesting is how disruption is happening at the intersection of verticals. So the work that Tara's doing at Numina around, mobility and city planners and real estate developers, having all of these stakeholders pulled together, really, really interesting, where it's not just you come from one industry and you're solving one problem. It's about bringing people together. Weather Logic's the same thing, like really thinking about how weather patterns need to, impact drivers as well as like infrastructure planners, as infrastructure development. So all of these things are really important. And so I would say that as you're thinking about building your teams, bring people from different industries, from different backgrounds, because that's where like real innovation is going to happen. And the second thing, our fund is an urban tech fund, but we are 100% focused on sustainability. Every company that we invest in has a sustainability agenda. And so what Paul was talking about, climate change, it's coming. We can't stop it. People are now starting to realize that. And what's really important is every single company is going to have a sustainability agenda, even if you think your product has nothing to do with climate. The SEC came out with rules recently that as soon as 2023, some of the companies on their platform are going to actually have to start reporting on carbon emissions. And so it's really important now for all of the startups to really understand, what frameworks are you going to have to adhere to? How are you actually going to have to get involved in this? And how can you actually turn that into a selling point? So if somebody comes to Paul and says, I can actually help you reduce your risk, and I can actually help you with your own sustainability and climate agenda, because as a corporate, you're going to have to report on these things. That actually helps you move through the system faster, because you've actually really helped Paul with a lot of the things that he's thinking about. So I would say those two things are, things to keep in mind for any startup. at the moment.
Amazing. Amazing.
Great.
Well, thanks, guys. Thanks to Nicole. Thanks to Paul. Great conversation to kick off the demos from this